Hi everyone, and welcome to my first video of this new channel, Catholic Home and Travel. This is an exciting endeavor for me because I love interior design, I love travel, and I love my faith. So what will this channel be about? Well, it's right there in the name. First, I'm going to be sharing specific ways you can bring the faith alive in your home through beautiful interior design, because after all, I'm a professional interior designer. Second, I want to show you the Catholic places of interest you can find when traveling to a particular city, region, or country. I don't know about you, but when I travel, there are two things that I prioritize when planning my itinerary: the beauty of God's natural world and the incredible Catholic churches, shrines, monasteries, relics, and other places of interest that the Catholic Church has given us over the last 2,000 years. So, if any or all of this sounds exciting to you, then you are definitely in the right place. Now, I thought long and hard about what my first video should be about, and because travel is on my mind right now, I decided that I wanted to talk about one of my favorite countries in the entire world, which also happens to have an incredibly rich Catholic history. That's right, I'm talking about Spain. Oh, how I love Spain. I've been blessed to have been able to visit twice, and at some point in the future, I would definitely love to return. Because Spain has such a rich Catholic history, I'm not going to be able to go in depth on every place you may want to visit because that would make this a very long video. Instead, I'm going to select what I believe are the highlights in different parts of this country. My goal is that by seeing videos and images of some of these beautiful places, you will be inspired to go visit some of these Catholic treasures while on your own travel adventures. So let's get started. First, let's begin in the northwestern region of Galicia with one of the most well-known Catholic cathedrals, even to non-Catholics. This cathedral, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, is the final destination of one of the most famous treks in the world, the Camino de Santiago. And of course, I'm referring to the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela, also known as the Cathedral of St. James. This beautiful cathedral is not only considered to be one of the most important sacred monuments in all of Spain, it is, of course, where you will also find the body of St. James, one of Jesus Christ's 12 apostles, next to the remains of two of his disciples, St. Athanasius and St. Theodore. Construction on this beautiful cathedral began in the year 1075 by Alfonso VI of Leon, who was the king at the time. However, due to some stops and starts with construction, it wasn't consecrated until the year 1211 under Alfonso IX. Some fun facts about this cathedral include the fact that it employs a variety of architectural styles, including Baroque, Gothic, Neoclassical, Romanesque, and Plateresque. In the Portico de la Gloria, which is the main entrance, you will find a statue of St. James to welcome pilgrims after completing their Camino. As you can see in this portico, there are a number of sculptures, 200 to be precise, which represent figures from the Bible that is meant to refer to the Apocalypse. The door that takes you into the St. James crypt is known as either the Puerta Santa, which means holy door, or the Puerta del Perdón, which means forgiveness door. Like any good cathedral, I love the fact that the floor plan is in the shape of a Latin cross and that confession is available throughout the day. Finally, be sure to check out the Botafumero, which is a very large thurible. You Catholics likely know that this is what holds the incense at a Mass. Anyway, this thurible, which was added in the mid-19th century, weighs an incredible 116 pounds, is nearly 5 feet in length, and is suspended 65 feet up in the air. No surprise, then, that this one is the largest in the world. If you happen to be there for a special Mass, this thurible may be released and will swing upwards of 42 miles per hour. Incredible! Second on my list is for those of you who have a special devotion to St. Ignatius of Loyola. Of course, I am referring to the Sanctuary of Loyola, which is in the País Vasco region of northern Spain, very near the beautiful city of San Sebastián. Here you will find a basilica, a sanctuary, Ignatius's birth home, a retreat house, a youth hostel, and a library. First to the basilica. The construction on this beautiful Baroque basilica began in 1689 and was dedicated on July 31st, 1738, on the feast day of St. Ignatius. Its impressive dome is 65 feet in width and 164 feet high, and at the base of the dome you will find depictions of 8 virtues including faith, charity, justice, religion, hope, temperance, prudence, and fortitude. One of my favorite features of the basilica is the organ. Built in 1889, this massive organ has 3 keyboards and 2,172 pipes and is still used for liturgical celebrations. The sanctuary is built around the 4-story tower house of the Loyola family, also known as Santa Casa, which you can also visit. This is a great pilgrimage for Catholics because not only was he born here, this is also where his conversion took place when he was recuperating after his war injury. Next to the basilica is a retreat center that holds meetings, seminars, and retreats. The library is quite impressive, housing rare books and over 150,000 volumes published since the 16th century. Unfortunately, you won't find his tomb in Loyola. For that, you must travel to the Church of the Gesù in Rome. Number 3 on my list is someone that you can find in the Church of Conceptionists next to the convent where she served in Agreda, Spain. Agreda, which is located in the region of Castilla and León. This someone is the Venerable Mary of Agreda. Well, her incorrupt body, that is, and it has been incorrupt for over 400 years. For those of you who don't know about this saint in the making, Mary of Agreda was a well-known mystic of her time. Also known as Mary of Jesus of Agreda, or the Lady in Blue, this exceptional nun was made abbess, meaning head of her abbey at the young age of 25. I could spend a long time talking about her many exemplary virtues and actions, but what I want to point out, if you don't already know, is that between the years of 1621 and 1631, when she was between the ages of 19 and 29, she bilocated over 500 times while she was praying. That's right. Specifically, while she lived in a cloistered convent in Agreda, Spain, she would simultaneously find herself in North America, specifically in the area of East Texas, New Mexico, and western Arizona. So what was she doing there? She was teaching the Jumano Indians and other tribes about the Catholic faith. Unfortunately, she was tortured and left for dead many times, but fortunately, she always returned to her body in Spain unharmed. And it gets better. Then she would return to preach to the same Indians who had tortured her and left her for dead. You can imagine their shock. Now, if you haven't heard this story, you might be thinking, did anybody fact-check this? Well, of course they did. Long story short, her confessor took the story up the chain, if you will, and the Archbishop in Mexico, Francisco Manso y Zuniga, launched an investigation to see whether or not these Indians knew anything about the Catholic faith before the missionaries arrived. Well, he didn't have to wait long for his answer, because 50 of these Indians ended up walking over 500 miles to see the Isleta mission in what is now New Mexico, and asked for priests to be sent to their tribe so they could be baptized as the Lady in Blue had instructed them. The priests went and ended up baptizing not only their tribe, but many other tribes as well who had been visited by Mary of Agreda. In all, thousands of baptisms took place because of her efforts. Mary of Agreda is also the author of The Mystical City of God, which details the incredible interior life of the Blessed Virgin Mary based on the numerous conversations that Mary of Agreda had with our Blessed Mother. Moving to the east of the country into Catalunya, number 4 on my list is a very famous basilica in Barcelona that I was fortunate to be able to see with my own eyes. That's right, La Sagrada Familia, designed by the famous architect and devout Catholic Antoni Gaudí. Construction on La Sagrada Familia, which means Church of the Holy Family, began in the 1880s and remarkably continues to this day with a goal completion date of 2026, which also happens to be the 100-year anniversary of Gaudí's death. As you can see, this basilica dominates the Barcelona skyline, and when it's finished, it will stand at an incredible 566 feet tall, making it the tallest religious structure in the world. This height also has important significance. Gaudí believed that his creation shouldn't surpass God's creation, so he made sure not to exceed the height of Barcelona's tallest natural point, which is Montjuic Mountain. Although Gaudí was the final architect to work on La Sagrada Familia, the idea for the basilica came from a devout Catholic named Josep Maria Bocabella. One of my favorite aspects of this basilica, and there are many, are the 3 Gothic-style facades. The Nativity facade, which is dedicated to the birth of Jesus, the Passion facade, which of course is dedicated to Jesus' passion and death, and the Glory facade, which is not yet completed, but will be dedicated to the glorious nature of Jesus after his death. One thing I do remember is how quiet it was inside, and that is because it is nearly impossible to not be completely awestruck by the interior architecture. If the stained glass windows don't take your breath away, then the ceiling sure will. It's truly like nothing I've ever seen. Some interesting facts about this basilica. It's inspired by nature, and you can see that everywhere with the tree-like columns, the numerous reptile sculptures, and other natural forms. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Gaudi is buried here in the crypt. It was consecrated as a basilica by Pope Benedict in 2010, and eventually there will be 18 spires in total to represent the 12 apostles, the 4 evangelists, the Virgin Mary, and the tallest and most glorious one will represent Jesus Christ. Finally, it's good to know that if you visit on a Sunday or a holy day, you can attend Mass here. Moving down the east coast to the beautiful city and region of Valencia, if you find yourself in this part of the country, I highly recommend visiting St. Mary's Cathedral, built between the 13th and 15th centuries in a mainly Gothic style. Now, while this cathedral is worthy of being visited on its own merits, because you can certainly see how beautiful it is, it also makes my list because it is believed to house the Holy Grail. That's right, the Holy Grail. For those of you who may not know, the Holy Grail is the chalice that Jesus drank from at the Last Supper. Now, you might have caught that I said that the Holy Grail is believed to be at this cathedral on display in a side chapel. I said that because other groups and churches claim to have the actual Holy Grail. However, this chalice is one of the few recognized by the Vatican as possibly being the original one. Likely for that reason, it was venerated by Pope John Paul II in 1982, and he used it when he ordained roughly 150 priests. Pope Benedict also used this chalice in an outdoor mass for the Fifth World Meeting of Families in 2006. So, while we can't say for certain whether this cathedral has the real one, what we do know is that this chalice was supposedly kept in Aragon in a monastery until roughly the year 1400 when it was brought to Valencia. Additionally, the dark brown agate used on the top of the chalice dates back to the 1st century, while the base dates back to the Middle Ages. For these reasons alone, I thought it was pretty incredible to see this chalice in person. Apart from this beautiful chalice, there are many other special things to see at the cathedral, including beautiful chapels, famous works of art, and I enjoyed the incredible views of Valencia after climbing the 207 steps in the main tower. Now, if you find yourself in the southwest part of the country in the region of Andalusia, specifically in the city of Sevilla or Seville, you should definitely try to visit Seville Cathedral, the largest cathedral in the world, which also happens to have the tomb of Christopher Columbus. Seville Cathedral, also a UNESCO World Heritage Site, was built in the 1400s over the remains of a mosque and was completed in 1506. This cathedral is massive. Its central nave, which is the longest nave of any cathedral in Spain, is roughly 138 feet tall, 443 feet long, 249 feet wide, and covers 124,000 square feet. It also has 80 side chapels that are as large as regular churches. In fact, when the plans were drawn up, the church elders stated, "Let us build a church so beautiful and so magnificent that those who see it finished will think we are mad." Mission accomplished, in a good way. This cathedral, which is also known as St. Mary of the Sea, has both Gothic and Renaissance architectural influences. It has 15 doors, each with a unique relief or carving above it depicting a variety of Christian scenes. Here we have the Puerta de la Concepción, or the Gate of the Conception, on the north facade of the cathedral. The main cathedral door is known as the Door of Assumption because, as you probably guessed, it has a relief above it depicting the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary into heaven. But perhaps the most stunning feature of this cathedral is the altarpiece. This altarpiece, which incredibly was created by a single craftsman, is composed of 45 wood-carved scenes of the life of Jesus, which are covered in gold. That makes this the largest and most expensive altarpiece in the world. As I mentioned, you can find the tomb of Christopher Columbus being held up by 4 bearers representing the kingdoms of Castile, León, Aragon, and Navarra. But you will also find the tombs of many other famous individuals here, such as bishops, kings, and queens of Spain, including Ferdinand III, the king who unified Castile and León. Because there are so many other beautiful relics and artworks to see in this cathedral, it is recommended to pick up an audio guide at the entrance if you plan on visiting. Last, and most definitely not least, let's go back up to the large region of Castilla and León, where you can visit the hometown of one of the female doctors of the church. If you guessed St. Teresa of Avila, you would be correct. Saint Teresa is one of my very favorite saints, and for those of you who aren't too familiar with her, she lived as a nun in the Carmelite order during the 1500s and is famously known for her many locutions and visions of Jesus and Mary. She was also a reformer, reforming many convents that had become too much like the outside world, and she also founded new convents. She is also the author of many famous books, including, perhaps her most famous work, The Interior Castle. What I think is so lovely about the city of Avila is that today it looks pretty much the same way as it did back in the 16th century. Think cobblestone streets, a large wall around the city to defend itself, and the beautiful medieval architecture. Regarding the saint, you can visit the Monastery of the Incarnation where you can see her cell, the St. Teresa of Avila Church, which is her birth home, and the Cathedral of Avila, which contains relics of St. Teresa and her good friend, St. John of the Cross. One really cool fact about this saint is that when her body was exhumed more than 300 years later, not only was it incorrupt, but she had a perforation in her heart. For those of you who have read her autobiography, you might recall that she spoke about an angel who had thrust an arrow into her heart, which she said left her on fire with a great love of God. Many state that this is an excellent example of science confirming a mystical experience. Now, because there are so many wonderful Catholic sites to visit in Spain, I decided to add on an honorable mention, which we can find in the heart of Basque country. I'm referring to San Juan de Gaztelugatxe. What's good to know is that this name means Castle Rock in Basque, and we can easily see why. On the top of this island, which is connected to the mainland by a man-made stone bridge, you will find a church which is dedicated to John the Baptist. Unfortunately, this church is not the original church. In fact, this church has been burned down and rebuilt several times over the centuries. This church has had many functions over the centuries, including acting as a hermitage in the 9th century, a convent in the 12th century, and as a defensive outpost during numerous attacks over the next several hundred years. Going back to the man-made bridge, you'll see that it transitions into a narrow path with 241 steps and is considered one of the world's grandest staircases. On the final step, you will find a footprint that, according to folk tradition, is said to have been left by John the Baptist when he visited, and another reason why this has become such a popular pilgrimage site. Of course, the views from this church, which are 492 feet above sea level, are absolutely stunning and worth the 1-hour hike you have to take in order to get there. If you're mobility challenged, you can also visit by boat. Unfortunately, because the popularity of this site has exploded due to its being featured in the TV show Game of Thrones, the local government has been working to try to figure out how to protect the monument from the surge of visitors, which could include limiting the number of visitors each day or charging an entrance fee. That said, it's good to know that you have to book your visit during peak season before arriving. And there you have it, my top Catholic sites that you will find when visiting this beautiful country. I hope you enjoyed it, and more importantly, were inspired to embark on your own Catholic pilgrimages.